Welcome to The Hindu. I'm Jagriti Chandra. In this episode, we are discussing IndiGo's recent announcement of its foray into non-stop international flights with Manchester and Amsterdam as the first set of destinations. An important development in Indian aviation because what this means is that Indian travelers have one more Indian airline for far flung destinations other than Air India. To discuss this, we've got none other than Pieter Elbers, the CEO of IndiGo. Peter joined IndiGo nearly 3 years ago, just when the world was emerging out of COVID, and has been spearheading IndiGo 2.0 and aggressively expanding internationally. Since his joining, the airline has placed its first order of wide bodies, the A350s, making its intent of entering long haul international travel clear to the world. IndiGo has also launched tailor made business class seats and a loyalty program in departure from its low cost or no frills model. We will discuss these developments and a lot more with Peter today. Thank you so much for joining us on this show, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for being the first in this show. Congratulations.
And thanks for doing this launch episode with us, Peter. Hectic past few weeks for you and a lot of travel?
Hectic past few years for me and hectic travel. No, we are doing a lot of things at the same time at IndiGo, and clearly the past few weeks with the start of the 787, which we started on the Bangkok route, clearly has been a very new milestone for IndiGo, and we're very proud, obviously.
Yeah. Could you tell us something about, why Manchester and Amsterdam are your first two destinations in Europe? You've mentioned in a recent announcement, likely from July. Though there's been Turkey too, where you've been flying since 2019.
Yeah. Maybe let's take a step back and see how IndiGo is building its international position. And indeed, I joined IndiGo when the world was emerging from COVID and the Indian air travel was emerging from COVID. At that point in time, IndiGo was having in the range of 20 international destinations and very much concentrated here in the region itself. And if you look over that point in time, we started to expand our network by, in fact, pushing borders. And if you wish, we were going towards new heights and literally across new frontiers. And that started with more flights into the region. We started to really bump up our operation into Singapore, for example. We used to have Singapore from only 3 Indian cities. Now we fly from 10 Indian cities into Singapore. So step one was solidifying what I call the region. Step number 2 was going towards new territories. And that was Central Asia, Indonesia, Africa. When we had the first flight into Africa, I had the honor of being on that flight. Very touching moment. For the first time in history, IndiGo was touching African soil, which is it's a big thing in terms of our growth. So that was step number 2, and all these expansions have been incredibly successful. Bangalore to Denpasar is doing very well. Nairobi is doing well. Central Asia is doing well. But with that, we are now ready for step number 3, and step number 3 is further expanding our scope. And clearly, the further you are away from India, the lower the capacity share of airlines from India is. So if you look at the region, it is like 55 non-Indian, 45% Indian airlines. If you go to Europe, it's more like 70% European operators, 30% Indian operators. So we believe there's a big opportunity out there for Indian operators, and IndiGo clearly is committed to be one of those, to take part of that market and to further stimulate growth, because a lot of these travelers are Indian travelers. So for us, the step number 3 is expanding that range. Europe, for a whole host of reasons, is a natural part of that expansion. XLR will further help us, but I'm sure we come back on that. And then looking at the European landscape, Amsterdam and Manchester clearly were 2 very obvious destinations. Amsterdam being a great connecting point to other places in Europe. It's also a place where a lot of Indian companies have decided to put their facilities. So there's a growing Indian community in Amsterdam as well. And Manchester, for a whole lot of historic reasons, already had a huge Indian community, and also economically it's expanding a lot. So the choice was, I get all kind of suggestions. You should go here, there, and the other, and we choose for these two destinations to start with.
Peter, what was a bit of a surprise was that while IndiGo placed its first wide body order in May last year of 30 Airbus A350s, you didn't decide to wait all the way until 2027, but you went ahead and announced long haul plans sooner than was expected in the market. How did this sudden decision come about?
Yeah. Well, jaldi jaldi, ne? So in a way, the growth of the Indian market is just a phenomenal growth. And the reality is, when we decided to further spread our wings, we were building on what we had as the XLR order already, which will start to come in from the coming financial year. But then clearly the wide bodies are only coming in 27. And we felt actually that waiting to 27 was a bit too long. And as I shared in another occasion, India is in a hurry, and so is IndiGo. So we decided to move in order to cater for that demand and accommodate the demand, to start with damp leases. And we have engaged with Norse for these damp leases. First plane we took into operation in March, and there's more planes to come towards the second half of this year. And clearly that will help us to prepare even better when the 350s are coming in, when the XLR is there. And with the growth of the Indian market, we feel that actually we shouldn't wait for 2 years. We should start doing it now.
Yeah. But some would also say that there was this sort of desperate expectation in the market, that after the demise of Jet Airways in 2019, there was a need that you couldn't just have one long haul international service provider. In that sense, do you think it also took a lot of time for you to get into long haul?
You know, IndiGo has been an incredible success story in building it from 18 years, from basically a domestic airline starting with the route Delhi, Guwahati, Imphal 18 years back. And then when we celebrated our 18th anniversary last year, we welcomed 100 million customers a year. That is unprecedented. No other place in the world something like this has happened. And I think something every Indian should be proud of it. It's a great achievement, and all these millions and millions of first-time travelers, which were allowed by the IndiGo network, is in fact, or enabled rather, by the Indian IndiGo network, is a proof point of that. But going international is a very different ballgame altogether, and one should be able to walk before one runs, and therefore the steps we are taking are all interconnected. We started the loyalty program. We started the premium product on some of the domestic sectors. The XLR will further spread our region. So for us, the importance really is, you cannot just decide from one day to the next, tomorrow I'll fly wide bodies. It's a very different operation. You need to have a cargo proposition. You need to have all these parts in place. And secondly, we are up against a very different competition. So, domestic competition is one dimension. International competition with great hubs in the region. Singapore is a great hub. Dubai is a great hub. Doha is a great hub. So we need to be ready for that competition. So therefore, for us, we've taken the decision, basis the growth in India, but we need to make sure that all the parts of that puzzle will be ready by the time these planes are coming.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been a gradual progress towards this, is what you're saying. But I also wanted to understand that a lot of people have felt, even those within the airline, that it's the LCC model that has been the success of IndiGo and why it runs as a profitable airline. But now what you're moving towards more of a hybrid model, from the stretch seats as well as the loyalty program. So talk to us about this sort of shift that is happening, and how will you ensure profitability with this new tweaked model?
I think in general, there was a time where all airlines were the same network airlines 20, 30 years ago. And then someone came up with the idea, say, you know what, we're going to strip all that stuff and we're going to build low cost. So you had a second sort of set of airlines. You had network airlines or traditional airlines and or legacy, for the lack of a better word, and low cost. And low cost were in fact undoing a lot of stuff which the others were doing. And it was a pretty clear distinction between one and the other. Over the last 15 years, I would say, these strict borders between one and another have kind of faded. And all kind of definitions which used to be there, if you do this, you're low cost. If you do that, you're low cost, have faded. If we look to the catering proposition on some of the network airlines, they've turned into paid catering. If you look to secondary airports, which used to be a sort of low cost territory, IndiGo is flying from all the main airports and flying high frequency. So we have left that pure LCC in the classical definition of the word long ago. What we have maintained is our cost leadership, and we continue to maintain our cost leadership. So that will continue to be there. And then going forward with the change of the markets, the India of today is changing, rapidly changing. And we feel that we should be able to cater for the different needs of India. So we keep the very foundation, cost leadership, affordable fares, millions and millions of Indians who didn't fly before will choose the skies in the years ahead. The penetration of air travel in India is still one of the lowest in the world. So the opportunity to grow is phenomenal. And we continue to provide that opportunity. But on top of that, as kind of next layer, we also want to make sure that those who are flying frequently, we have a loyalty program. Those who have certain aspirations, be it business driven, be it personal spending driven, be it taking their parents for the first time on a flight. And I think there's and it's maybe a bit more of an emotional notion, but there has been a generation of Indians who took their parents for the first time on a flight. And whenever you see one of these videos, it's incredible, touching to see it. There's going to be a next generation who's taking their parents or their siblings or relatives for the first time on a premium product. And I think we are moving now to that stage. And we do it on a scale which is matching to where the demand is today. In 10, 15 years' time, it will be different. But for now, we start to build on that one. So we are sizable enough to build an airline which is matching the needs of India. And whatever label others want to put on it, you're an LCC, or you're a hybrid, or you're this, or you're that, I don't care too much. We're building a model which is matching the needs of our
So,
customers.
Peter, how has been the experience with the business class seats launched in November last year? What is the customer feedback that you've received on it?
Well, we have the business class introduced on our domestic flights. We started now with our 40 daily sectors between Delhi and Mumbai. We have business class. We finalized all the sectors also between Delhi and Bangalore. We start by the end of this month. Next week, I believe, we start with Delhi, Chennai. And actually, we are very pleased with the first response on our business product we have on Delhi, Bangkok, which, it's to some extent a leisure-driven route. But we found an enormous positive response in the Indian market for that product. And that's the same plane which will operate into Amsterdam and Manchester.
Will there be any tweaks to Indigo Stretch as you go into Europe, or hot food or something with the seats?
We continue to tweak it. I think when we announced Stretch, we called it a tailor-made business class for the Indian market. Clearly, when you fly 8 hours as compared to 3 hours, you will have to make some tweaks. So we will be doing that. And I would say stay tuned to see what we're doing here.
Are you not going to announce here right now?
No. I mean, it's the first show. I want to have a reason to come back at the later show. Okay.
Okay. Peter, you've spoken about plans for 2030, how you plan to become a global airline and double your fleet as well. What exactly does that entail?
Today, we are like a 400 aircraft airline. And that 400 aircraft airline allows us to welcome on an annual basis. Last year, we did 113 million customers. That in itself, if I say that to some people from overseas, every 3 days, IndiGo welcomes 1 million customers. Every 3 days, actually more than 1 million. It's like 3.5 lakh a day. So every 3 days, 1 million. 3 days further, 1 million. So that's the type of scale we're talking about. But with that, still the number of Indians with a passport is still lesser than other parts of the world. The Indian penetration for air travel is lesser than other parts of the world. So we have set the ambition to double in size by the end of the decade. And we believe that is a realistic target. And why do we believe that? You take the GDP growth and you see what happens in other parts of the world that will lead to more mobility. So our fleet orders, which are exactly tuned to this, are helping us to get that objective. It's going to be a lot of first-time flyers. But as we mentioned earlier, I'd like to focus not only on the first-time flyers. That's going to be the very basis and foundation, but also the aspirational India, which is going to be part of the success story of India, right? And the fact that India will move to be the third largest economy in the world by 27, that sort of justifies airlines of that size.
Okay, but give our listeners a sense of, what are the potential destinations that you aim to connect? Do you think by 2030 you'll reach Australia and the US? Some sense of the network.
Today, IndiGo serves 91 destinations in India itself. A statistics which I like always very much is 87% of the Indians is living in a range of 100 kilometers from an IndiGo served airport. So that in itself shows, how well we're covered in the country. That number of 91 will continue to grow, but it's going to be moderate because with 100 airports, we cover pretty much the nation itself. International, we have moved from 20 to now 40 different destinations. More importantly, we have added an incredible number of routes. So there's destinations like Singapore used to have 3 Indian cities connected by IndiGo. Now we have 10. So it's the same destination. It's not a new destination, but a lot of new routes. I think that's the thing you will see happening going forward a lot. Karabi in Thailand, we start both from Mumbai and from Bangalore. So immediately it's one destination to new routes. Clearly the XLR will bring us further into Europe, and with the 350, Australia and Europe and further into Asia are clearly on our radar. Whether we would start to fly to the US or not, we keep that option open. We haven't decided any of that. Technically, the plane can do it. That's exactly why we opted for the 350. That from pretty much any place in India can have that range. It's I guess you neither me knows exactly how the Indian economy and the Indian diaspora and all the sort of global dynamics is by 2030. So we wanted to have an aircraft which can basically serve all these different parts of the world, and we can keep the option open to do there. But the first steps clearly now are start to expand on Europe.
All right. You also mentioned XLRs and that you expect deliveries from the next financial year, which is April. Can you just give us a sense of what's happening there?
The XLR is going to be for us an important part of our extended range. And if we look to India and we start gradually to expand the range, the XLRs will be helping us to serve a couple of destinations which are served today from India, but not per se from Delhi. Denpasar, we fly it out of Bangalore, not from Delhi. So it will be a great opportunity to connect Denpasar from Delhi with the XLR. XLR can go to places in Europe like Athens and Geneva. And so I think there's a great opportunity for our Indian customers to fly direct rather than connecting in other places. So it's a great opportunity and helping us to further prepare before the 350 is there. So these planes will start to come in. And as they start to come in, we'll start to build up our network. We have not yet announced what's going to be the first destination. Neither will I announce that today. But clearly, the stations I just mentioned, they're all part of that set of possibilities.
And the Far East, as you mentioned earlier, is also on the anvil with the help of XLRs.
Yeah, I mean, today, there's, I would say, still limited connectivity to parts of Northeast Asia. It's a lot to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, but Northeast Asia, much less so. I would believe that between these sort of economic entities, more growth will happen. I think Japan is another great example. Japanese companies are investing in India. We started the codeshare with Japan Airlines now for the exact same reason. They fly to Delhi, they fly to Bangalore, they connect on our flights. we start to get some market awareness in the Japanese market. And I think that's obviously a market which going forward also provides great opportunities.
So how many deliveries are you looking at for XLRs this financial year?
That is still part of the discussion with Airbus.
So when does the first XLR arrive?
That's part of that very same discussion in throughout the year, and we haven't sort of disclosed the exact month yet.
Okay, all right. Also, just since we are talking about aircraft deliveries, you have one 787 from Norse, and 3 more are expected this year. What about A350s? There was some discussions around swapping of narrow body slots for wide body slots, early delivery of wide body. Is that something?
I don't know where that discussion is coming from, but we have the 350s. The 350s are coming from 2027. We have world's largest order book when it comes to narrow bodies. So we have a set of 320s and 321s coming in, one every week. We were the largest taker of planes last year. 58 deliveries, no other airline in the world had that number. So that's it. You cannot just pick up the phone on Monday morning and say to Airbus, you know what? I don't want a 321, give me a 350. That's not how it works,
Not
right?
even if you're the CEO of IndiGo?
Not even if you're the CEO of IndiGo. They will politely listen and they will say, yeah, we can do that, but we can do that in, 28 or 29 or whatever. So these delivery flows, and I mean, to just a reality check, you're not building a plane like overnight. That's a month, and all had to be prepared and all. So the entire pipelines of planes is pretty much fixed. So we know that the 350 is coming by 27. We know that the XLR is coming in next financial year, and we just didn't want to wait all the way till 27. That's exactly why these 787s are coming in. 4 are confirmed now, and we said we continue to look for further ways to expand our wings.
There would be further wet leasing for those European routes.
Again, what I like, and that's why I feel so much at home in IndiGo, whatever we communicate, we're going to do. And phrased differently, we only communicate what we're actually going to do. And, every company chooses its own communication style and, a lot of communication. And I think for IndiGo, and I feel very much at ease and close to the heart with that, is, we communicate and then we're going to do it. So today it's 4. If we're going to do more, we communicate it. But until that time, we just focus on whatever we have said already.
Yeah. Peter, you spoke about, you said, let me give you a reality check. There's a pipeline of aircraft. I can't just simply dial a phone and get aircraft the next day.
Well, you can do this for the restaurant, right? Forget the samosa, give me the chole bhature. But that doesn't work. That doesn't work with planes.
Yeah. So, since you've joined IndiGo, we've seen how, one challenge after another, IndiGo has sort of circumvented and worked around those challenges. Talk to us about how you went about the collaboration with Turkish Airlines and did not let capacity constraints or supply chains constraints constrain you, restrict your ambitions, and now the wet leasing with Norse. So talk to us about navigating some of those challenges.
Yeah. Well, thank you for highlighting that. I think what I found when I joined IndiGo, there's a deeply rooted spirit in the company, and I to some extent only had to unleash that because it was already there. And I guess people post-COVID were a bit like, where are we heading and what's going on and what's the future, and all understandably so. But that there's a strong sense of, and someone phrased it earlier today to me, like, your people feel like we're on a mission, and that is a very strong sense in the company, and that is there for, importantly, the frontline staff. When our cabin crew, people at the cockpit, the check-in agents, cargo handlers, everyone, we're on a mission, and the mission is this. And the same goes for circumventing some of these challenges. We had, and we still have, a very significant number of planes on the ground due to these supply chain challenges. I would say a lot of other airlines in the world would have come into serious issues because of that. We have just taken up an approach where say, we're going to live up to our capacity guidance. We're going to get these damp leases in. We're going to collaborate with the regulator. We're going to collaborate, and I should say the collaboration there with the regulator, which has its own set of responsibilities, is very strong and very supportive in making sure that we can have India keep on growing. And that spirit, we're on a mission, is there. And with that spirit, I feel privileged to sort of unlock so many opportunities and opening the new destinations, getting the new fleet, doing the mitigating measures, launching a loyalty program. And I would say by now everyone can see how to connect the dots and the direction we're going. And that's given a tremendous amount of energy in the company. And, wherever I go, and be it sort of the back offices or the frontline staff or some of these stations, I mean, these people do a commendable job in often very challenging circumstances, especially the frontline staff in often difficult circumstances, which has gone very well. And, if you take for example, the IROP season this year in Delhi, admittedly, the weather was somewhat better than last year. But despite that, or I should say with that, the operation was so much more smooth. So we took lessons from last year, we implemented them, we executed them, and we're on a mission to make it the best possible travel experience. And that spirit is there both for the strategic decisions as well as for the very operational decisions.
So, I mean, even to us on the outside, some of those changes are quite evident, the way the social media response, to customers happens now during fog situations. Even on your website, I think you provide proactive information on delays, etc. So talk to us. That was a bitter episode, the fog fiasco that happened in 2020.
No, and that's fair. And I think we should learn from these elements. So last year, Jan of 24 was probably one of the worst fog days. And, it was very bad. Standing here even on my balcony at home, looking outside, I couldn't see the sort of next door balcony. So it was bad. Where we probably had not fully prepared is what to communicate, what to share, what to do, etc. So after that, last year, we had in-depth sessions with our entire team. The best way to learn is to be open and transparent what we should do better. So we made a commitment to each other and with that to our customers to make sure that we run a better operation next season. And I think all the initiatives, I'm glad you're highlighting a few, the proactive information to our customer, the social media warning, hey, it's a very bad out day there. We do our best to get you to the destination. And even, some of spare crews on locations, some of proactive measurement, proactive cancellations and early rebooking. So we did an entire range, worked closely with the ecosystem. I think that's, again, here we work closely with the airports. If you recall, there was some maintenance going on in 2024 at the beginning of the year. You shouldn't do that at the peak of the IROP season. So all that collaboration, upgrading the airports, I'm very pleased with that collaboration. That's the only way how we can get the Indian eco aviation system forward by collaboration. And I think this IROP season is I'm proud what IndiGo did, and I'm equally proud of how we work together with the stakeholders in the system.
Yeah. So, of course, during the fog fiasco, we again saw how, frontline staff has to battle consumer frustration and anger. And you often talk about their contribution and the central role that they play for airlines. I wanted to understand, it seems that there's too much pent-up consumer angst and anger against airlines. Whether it's punctuality or whether it's delivery of just reliable services. Does this bother you, or is it common across the world, or is there something particular about India? Is it that the regulatory framework doesn't support consumers? Why do we see so much anger among customers?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we see so much anger. I think it has moderated a bit. You're right. A year and a half, 2 years ago, we had a few very visible elements, and even you and I spoke at that point in time. And some of these elements became extremely, so they went viral, and everyone had its view and its opinion on that. At the same time, we should be realistic. We have 3.5 lakh customers a day. And yes, things are happening. So I don't per se see a lot of angst, or speaking about IndiGo, I see a lot of angst. We try to measure it, and if I measure our sort of customer satisfaction every month, we review what are the complaints, what is the complaint ratio, what is the appreciation ratio, what's the net promoter score, what is some of the feedback, what's the social media sentiment, and all that stuff. So looking at all those data points, I don't see it sort of per se going up. I think where we continue to work, and that's a big sort of challenge, is we have upgraded a lot the information for our customers. So you get a message, hey, your flight is delayed. We communicate with you. What we should do now also is to make sure that our frontline staff has the exact same information, because there's nothing more confusing if the customer says my flight is delayed and the ground staff doesn't know. So that's the next step of digitization. So coming back, I don't see a lot of sort of big change in that angst. I think our staff is doing really a commendable job, especially in those difficult circumstances. I don't think it's unique to India. Yes, the Indian consumer is sort of value conscious and has his own set of expectations. Is that unique to India? No, that's not unique to India. And I don't like to stereotype any which way, because you have highly or overly demanding customers in India, but you also have them in the country where I come from. So that's not unique to a country. I don't like that stereotyping. And we should make sure that our staff has the procedures, the protocols, and the processes in place. And certain things, yeah, we do, because they are mandated by the regulator to do. So we just have to execute them. The safety briefing before takeoff, that's a procedure, and that people have to pay attention. That's a procedure, and we have to do that.
So my question about traveler anxiety wasn't specific to just IndiGo, but just industry-wide, because of the kind of complaints that we see, whether it could be, clogged toilets or other issues. But you mentioned that the airline is focused on more greater transparency, as well as proactive communication with the consumers in order to deal with some of those anxieties.
Absolutely. I think the IROPS is a good example. If you share with your customer, it's a very bad day out there in terms of fog. We do our best to get you to our destination. Please bear with us. We do our utmost. It's a very different destination than to say, we regret to inform you that your flight is 1 hour delayed. And I think that reality check, it's a very bad day out there in terms of fog. We do our best. That sort of sets the context and help.
I also want to ask you, since we are talking about consumer concerns, there is a lot of flack that airlines receive as far as airfares are concerned. What would you like to say about various contributing factors that are leading to higher airfares?
The fares are always an equation of demand and supply. That always happens. And again, I'm almost 3 years here now, and every Diwali, we see the discussion whether the fares are high or not. Candidly, it's not very consistent, because I see reports, the fares on Delhi-Mumbai this Diwali are as low as they have ever been. And then I see the fares on Delhi-Goa are as high as they've ever been. And they're sort of benchmark, you pit one point to the next one. The average of the fares and the RASK, if you wish, is public information, because we provide it being a listed company, and anyone can take all that. So yes, you will see fluctuations. And did you try to get a room in Ahmedabad when the national cricket team was playing? Hotel room?
40, 50s.
So that is what happens. And of course we should as an airline, we should be mindful for the excessive, if there's really, we should be mindful of that. But looking at sort of the grand scheme of things, there's going to be fluctuations always. They go up, they go down, and at the bottom line, there should be some ratio imbalance between the cost of operations and the revenue of operations. And then for the revenues of operations, yes, you have natural fluctuations like in any business.
And has the cost of operations post-COVID also gone up? You're also wet leasing aircraft. That's not a cheap proposition. Airport costs have gone up. Can you please tell us something about those factors as well?
For us cost leadership is deeply rooted in the DNA of the company. And we started this by, are you a low cost? But cost consciousness and cost leadership is deeply rooted. And that's very important because, again, being such a value conscious market and sort of highly competitive market, we need to have maintained that low cost basis. That's the very important part of the success and the continuity of IndiGo. What we see now clearly is that a lot of costs are rising, global costs are rising, and we've taken a lot of measures to deal with the capacity constraints we have because of the AOGs. What was important for us is to make sure that we deal and we address the growing market demand. And we have been doing that in a, I would say, phenomenal way, resulting in the jump from 78 million customers prior to COVID to 130 million now. And yes, that has come at the cost. If we look to our numbers, I think we have made actually a very good balance. We were very proud last year to kind of recover from the COVID losses and become a network positive company again. It was very important to move, sort of let that episode behind. And for us to keep that balance between revenues and cost is there all the time. And therefore this discussion, I'm glad you put these two questions together because they cannot be disconnected. If the global costs are rising, if costs in India are rising, with airport costs are rising, we put in a lot of efficiencies from our end. But at the end of the day, there should be a correlation between cost and revenues. If it's not, you're out of business at one point in time, as we have seen in the past. And IndiGo is committed to continue to serve our customers. So we should keep a permanent eye on that balance. And that means optimization. We had a fantastic load factor in the third quarter. We had 31 million customers in the third quarter. So we keep pushing that load factor. And at the same time, of course, we'll have discussions with airports and with all other providers. Hey guys, how about your cost levels?
Yeah. Could you pinpoint, for the benefit of our listeners, some of them are aviation enthusiasts, some of them are travelers, what are these factors? In one of the post-result calls, it was mentioned even air traffic congestion at some of the airports is contributing to higher costs. Then maintenance and spare parts costs have gone up as well.
In a way, if you simplify our business, and it's very simplified, you have a plane, and that plane has 230 seats, and you can fly a number of hours per day. And the number of hours per day you can fly determines of how many seats you can sort of offer to your company. This is an overly simplified picture. But in that dynamic, your fleet utilization, for example, is an important factor. It's one of the elements where IndiGo is very strong. We have a high fleet utilization. We fly in the night. We have a high fleet rotation. That has allowed us to have this affordable fares as a very basis of us. So we continue to focus on high fleet utilization, making sure that we keep our cost as low as possible. But some of these elements are determined by global factors. We buy the planes from Airbus. We get parts from Europe, from the US, from other parts of the world. Indian airports are rightfully so investing in new products, in new terminals, in new development. There's all cost related to that. So that continuous sort of discussion on cost and revenues is there. And that's, by the way, not unique to airlines. It's and any other business, you'll have the very same thing. The airline is only a bit more visible sometimes when it comes to fare levels.
Yeah, two last questions. One is on your AOGs, the current status, and what is expected. How are you planning to get those aircraft airborne?
Yeah, no, we've gone through this peak in the second quarter. That was where we felt it had peaked, and ever since we see the numbers going down, and we continuously interact with the OEMs to get that number down. I think all the mitigating measures we have taken have allowed us to still maintain our capacity guidance. So we have damp leases, lease extensions, even the wide bodies we have. And we mentioned a early double-digit growth number for FY25, and we reiterated that objective even in the last earnings call. So we're very confident we keep that number. We see the AOGs tapering down now. I'm not in the position to give an exact projection. When will it all be gone, or at what point in time? These are sort of gradual trajectories. What is important for us is that sort of the worst part is behind us, and we now start to move forward.
Okay. Peter, we've focused largely on your international plans. I also wanted to get a sense of what's going to happen to, domestic plans as well as short-haul international connectivity, or do you think that is saturated?
No, I think there's still an enormous opportunity out there. Domestic, we have had an incredible amount of new routes added. I mean, today, Indigo operates 450 routes in the nation. That is a number probably 200 more than we had around COVID. So that is, a massive. And places like great city of Ahmedabad now having so many different flights connected directly into Ahmedabad. So we see that, of course, we develop the metros. We also develop tier two, like Ahmedabad, where suddenly we move up now to dozens and dozens of direct cities connected to it. And then there's the tier three type of cities. I was in Vijayawada a few weeks back, and hey, we have now direct flights to a number of destinations. So that, I think, opportunity to start building on metro, non-metro, and I would say tier three type of cities will continue to be there. And I think that domestic connectivity will continue to rise. Regional, international, same story. Krabi we now do from 2 destinations. Could it be 4 in the future? Why not? Singapore, first 3, now 10. Can it further grow? Why not? Again, the geographical position of India, surrounded in the 4, 5, 6 hour range by an incredible host of opportunities to fly. That should enable us to continue to build on that regional network. And therefore, I mean, back to your question, are you going to fly to the US, and where in Europe are you going to fly? I understand these questions, and of course, they're great in terms of exposure and all. But the very foundation of IndiGo is our domestic network. This is home. This is the basis for what we are, who we are, and what we do. The region, we expand to that. And yes, there's going to be these international ones, and they'll get a lot of exposure. And you and I like to talk, whether it's Manchester and not Birmingham or whatever. But the very foundation is what we have here. And that will continue to be for the long time in the future.
Also, a lot of people are curious to know about your employment plans, your hiring plans, as you expand internationally. Could give us a sense of that.
We have today in the range of 60,000 people, mixture of our subsidiary handling company and IndiGo itself. IndiGo itself is in the range of 35 to 40,000. We are providing a lot of employment. And, when you live in Delhi, you could say, there's plenty of employment opportunities, right? There's everywhere is employment. But there's still a lot of parts of the country where these jobs are much welcomed and even much needed. And the spin-off effects, IATA recently made a fantastic report actually on what are the overall contribution effects of that. And they found, that one job in aviation is multiple jobs. I think it was even 6. One job in aviation goes up to 6 jobs outside aviation. And we see that to all these communities. So for me, the interesting part is, of course, what we hire, and even next year we'll hire thousands of new colleagues for all the expansion. And I'm ever so proud when I see these young ladies walking in as kind of maybe even insecure type of and then they go to the training, and then they start to work, and then 3 years later they're full of self-confidence and ready to take on the world, really. And I think that's part of our mission. So that's what we do, and we continue to build on that. But it's not only IndiGo, it's also what it does for the entire ecosystem.
So some specific numbers on pilots, cabin crew, ground personnel, AMEs in the next 2-3 years?
No, we're not having any. Of course, I have them, but I'm not sharing them. Otherwise we wouldn't know what we would be doing, right? So
because any discussion around pilot hiring, etc., goes extremely viral on social media and is aggressively discussed among.
And I understand that, because globally, and let me answer that more serious. Globally, the entire discussion about pilot shortages is a real one, and some parts of the world are really struggling with it. I think where the demographic dividend of India is coming in is it's not only a very young population, but also a very ambitious population. So we want people want to go ahead in life. And when we had the anniversary of the Independence Day, and we had 77 female pilots, and I had the pleasure of interacting with them and spend a couple of hours and drink a cup of tea, and then listening to their personal stories, how communities, families kind of collectively put in money for the training of one of these ladies and now they're pilots and they're flying in aircraft, and they're sort of our role models for what's going forward. So we'll continue to hire thousands of new colleagues, and an exact breakdown of how much in each category, that I leave up to our HR department to share that with me.
50 wide body pilots per year, 100 cabin crew per year. Give me something.
No, I'm not giving you.
I'll get more clicks on this podcast. More pilots and cabin crew would like to listen to what the IndiGo CEO has plans for.
We'll continue to hire in very sizable numbers.
With that, it's a wrap here. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. All the best for IATA AGM 2025. And hopefully, we'll do another show soon in your home country. Or should I say, other home country, since you also call India home.
Exactly. Very good. Thank you so much.